Article is from the Miami Times. It was actually back on October the 6th. I saw it this week on federaljack.com, a great webpage. FBI tries to deport Muslim man for refusing to be an informant. Bush Cheney and Carrie Edwards signs littered the lawns of North Miami Beach as Imam Fouad Farahi walked from a mosque to his apartment a few blocks away. It was November 1st, 2004, the day before George W. Bush would win a second term in office. But the Muslim holy man had been too busy fasting and praying to pay much attention to the presidential election. For Farahi, an Iranian citizen who had lived in the United States for more than a decade, it was simply another month of Ramadan in South Florida. Then, around 5 p.m., as he neared his apartment, he saw two men standing outside. They were waiting for him. "We're from the FBI," one of the men said. "Okay," he responded. They wanted to know about two South Florida men linked to the Al-Qaeda terrorist network. Jose Padilla, the so-called dirty bomber, was arrested in May 2002 and given enemy combatant status. He eventually stood trial in Miami, was convicted of terrorism charges, and sent to 17 years in prison. Another person, I might have trouble pronouncing this name, Shukri Juma, is a Saudi Arabian and an alleged Al-Qaeda member whose last known address was in Myanmar. The FBI is offering up $5 million for information leading directly to his capture. "I know Jose Padilla, but I don't know Adnan," Farahi told the agents. Of course, Farahi knew of this person. As imam of the Shamsuddin Islamic Center in North Miami Beach, Farahi was in a unique position to know about local Muslims, including Padilla and Shukri Juma. Padilla had prayed at Farahi's mosque and was once among his Arabic students. The other person was the son of a local Islamic religious leader. "I have had no contact with Padilla since 1998 when he left the country," Farahi told the government agents. He had once met Shukri Juma, but had no contact with him after that. "I don't know anything about his activities." "We want you to work with us," Farahi remembers the agents telling him. And this is when the imam's 5-year battle with the federal government began. "I have no problem working with you guys or helping you out," Farahi said. He could keep them informed about the local Muslim community or translate Arabic, but the relationship, he insisted, would need to be public. Others would have to know he was helping the government. But that wasn't what the FBI had in mind, Farahi says. The agents wanted him to become a secret informant who would investigate specific people. And they knew Farahi was in a vulnerable position. His student visa had expired, and he had asked the government for a renewal. He had also applied for political asylum, hoping one of those legal tricks would offer a way for him to stay in the United States indefinitely. "We'll give you residency," the agents promised. "We'll give you money to go to school." Farahi considered the offer for a moment and then shook his head. "I can't," he told them. The slender, bearded 34-year-old Farahi frowns as he recalls all of this while sitting on a white folding chair in the Shamsuddin Islamic Center on a recent afternoon. "People trust you as a religious figure, and you're trying to kind of deceive them," he says, remembering the choice he faced. That's where the problem is. Farahi soon discovered the FBI's offer wasn't optional. The federal government used strong-arm tactics, including trying to have him deported and falsely claiming it had information linking him to terrorism in an effort to force him to become an informant, he says. The imam has resisted the government at every step, having most recently taken his political asylum case to the U.S. Court of Appeals in Atlanta. "As long as you're not a citizen, there's a lot of things the government can do," says Ira Kurzban, Farahi's attorney. "They can allege you're a terrorist and try to bring terrorist charges against you, or they can get you deported. Terrorism," he explains, "can even be defined as giving money to a hospital in the West Bank that turns out to be run by Hamas." We have an article from InfoWars written by Jerry Mazza on October 20th. Ex-CIA Chief James Woolsey handed down gag order to 9/11 firefighters. This tale begins during and shortly after 9/11 of 2001, when writer named Randy Lavello published a story at Prison Planet. "Bombs in the building. World Trade Center conspiracy theory is a conspiracy fact." Among the many tales in this article, a number of which were picked up in Mike Rivero's website, What Really Happened, is a conversation between Lavello and Lieutenant Fireman and former auxiliary police officer Paul Isaac Jr. Lieutenant Fireman and former auxiliary police officer Paul Isaac Jr. explained to me, Lavello, that many other firemen know there were bombs in the buildings, but they're afraid for their jobs to admit it because the higher-ups forbid discussion of this fact. "There were definitely bombs in those buildings," he told me. Isaac also addressed the FBI gag order in an article by Greg Szymanski, saying it's amazing how many people are afraid to talk for fear or retaliation or losing their jobs. He mentions that the FBI gag order placed on law enforcement and fire department officials prevented them from openly talking about any inside knowledge of 9/11. Szymanski praised Isaacs in a highly interesting article titled One Man Investigative Team. Szymanski wrote that when he, Isaacs, worked as an auxiliary fireman specializing in emergency and disaster communications response, Isaac said after 9/11 he began monitoring all emergency units to see if any patterns or information about the perpetrators could be learned. Over the last 4 years, he's compiled information and names of civilians and firefighters whose identities he keeps anonymous for their safety, who all claim to have either witnessed explosions in the towers or have information that a controlled demolition took place. Isaacs is quoted as saying, "It's just amazing how many people are afraid to talk for fear of retaliation or losing their jobs." Again, regarding Woolsey's FBI gag order placed on law enforcement and fire department officials, preventing them from openly talking about any inside knowledge of 9/11.
At 10:30, I tried to leave the building, but as soon as I got outside, I heard a second explosion and another rumble and more smoke and more dust. I ran inside the buildings, the chandelier shook, and again, black smoke filled the air. Within another 5 minutes, we were covered again with more silt and more dust. And then a fire marshal came in and said we had to leave because if there was a third explosion, this building might not last.
As we were getting our gear on and making our way to the stairway, there was a heavy-duty explosion.
Some of the people out, then there's those secondary explosions, and then the subsequent collapses. So I don't know how many people were there. I know there was a lot of firefighters.
New York's bravest never had a chance.
We really never even got that close to the building. An explosion blew and it knocked everybody over.
The FBI is here, as you can see. They had roped this area off. They were taking photographs and securing this area just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
Most of the victims so far were people outside the blown-up buildings.
Like, it sounded like gunfire, you know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
To me, it sounded like an explosion. Then the building, the rolling sound sounded like the building collapsed.
The floors collapsed down. I saw it blow, and then ran like hell. Thank God. I'm 69, but I can still run.
It just went ba-boom. It was like a bomb went off. And it was like holy hell coming down them stairs. And then when we finally got to the bottom, we were coming out on a mezzanine level there, and another explosion came right by me because everyone flying.
Well, me and Mr. Hess, the corporation counsel, were on the 23rd floor. I told him we got to get out of here. We started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor.
I was down in the basement. All of a sudden, we heard a loud bang. And the elevator doors blew open. Some guy was burnt up. So I dragged him out. His skin was all hanging off.
The streets of the financial district covered with debris, in some cases ankle deep. Cars on fire, cars just turned by the force of the explosions. It was like something no one had ever seen.
This huge, incredible force of wind and debris actually came up the stairs, knocked my helmet off, knocked me to the ground.
I was about 5 blocks away when I heard explosions, 3 thuds, and turned around to see the building we just got out of, antenna tip over and fall in on itself.
We started running. Floor by floor, it started popping out.
It was if it had detonated.
Detonated.
Planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
I go downstairs. The foreman tells me to go to remove the containers. As I'm walking by the main freight car of the building, in the corridor, that's when I got blown. I mean, the impact of the explosion